Imagine walking into your kitchen where fresh chocolate chip cookies are baking in the oven. You haven't even had a bite yet. Just thinking about these cookies makes you excited. The desire to eat these cookies from simply thinking about them and smelling them is the result of dopamine releasing in your brain. Today, I want to help you understand what dopamine is and how it functions in your daily life. I have heard the term dopamine thrown around in conversation many times before, and maybe you have too, but I never truly understood what it is and how it's applicable to my daily life. I know many people likely share in this feeling of limbo. So today, I will share with you what I have learned on my research from dopamine. Dopamine is known as the feel-good neurotransmitter, and it affects motivation as part of our brain's reward system. There are 3 commonly known diseases associated with abnormal levels of dopamine. Dopamine is the feel-good neurotransmitter, and it impacts our feelings of pleasure, excitement, and learning. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that are released in the brain that send signals through the nervous system to the muscles. Dopamine is released when we do something enjoyable, sending the message to our body that this is good and we should remember it to do it again. The organization Mental Health America describes dopamine's role in learning as follows. When you're learning something new, dopamine both gets you started and keeps you going. Low levels of dopamine in your brain mean that you are more likely to quit when things get difficult. The release of dopamine and subsequent feelings of pleasure impact our motivation to continue certain behaviors. We feel good and we want to do whatever we can do to continue that good feeling. Speaking of motivation, dopamine actually plays more of a role in our feeling of wanting rather than liking. Dopamine impacts our motivation as part of our brain's reward system. When we are doing what we need to do to survive, such as eating, drinking water, etc., our brain rewards us by releasing dopamine. Our brain also mediates cost-benefit trade-offs when performing mental tasks. Studies have suggested that dopamine plays a role in influencing how our brain evaluates whether a mental task is worth the effort. In the 2020 psychological study, Westbrook et al. Found that those with higher dopamine levels were more likely to focus on the benefit of completing a task, which in this study was money earned, and choose the more difficult task compared to an easier task. Those with lower levels of dopamine were more sensitive to the perceived cost or task difficulty. A study by Fraser, a behavioral neuroscientist at the University of Minnesota in 2025, found that dopamine release is tied to motivating cues and is tightly controlled by the context in which these cues are encountered. This means that the situational context or mood that we are in determines the ability for a motivational cue, which is a sensation, an object, a person, to become desirable and motivate our behavior. Dopamine also impacts our sense of agency, which is the sense of control that we feel over our actions and the consequences of our actions. According to a psychological study by Ashby et al. In 2024, a sense of agency is fundamental to the human experience. It increases our motivation and improves many forms of learning. Their study suggests that increases in agency increase baseline dopamine levels throughout the brain and amplify the brain's dopamine response to significant environmental events. Dopamine levels in the average human's brain vary slightly throughout the day, depending on situational and emotional context. For someone with any of the following diseases, however, dopamine in the brain is abnormally fixed at either an extreme high or an extreme low level. There are 3 main diseases associated with extreme dopamine levels: Parkinson's disease, addiction, and ADHD. The following information comes from the Cleveland Clinic and Mental Health America. Parkinson's disease is a movement disorder that progressively worsens over time. Because dopamine affects how our brain sends signals to our muscles, Parkinson's disease occurs when brain cells that produce dopamine gradually stop working. Common symptoms of this disease include tremors, stiff muscles, slow movement, and unstable balance and posture. Addiction is a chronic condition where the use of substances sends large surges of dopamine through the brain. It is characterized by an extreme drive to seek pleasure from these substances rather than from activities that we need to survive: eating, drinking water, social interaction. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, is a complex disorder that is characterized by inattention and impulsivity. It has multiple causes, including genetic differences, low dopamine levels, and variations in the frontal lobe that affect executive functions such as planning, problem solving, and multitasking. Because dopamine drives you to both start and complete a task, low levels of dopamine in the brains of those with ADHD make it difficult for them to control and direct their attention towards certain tasks. In conclusion, dopamine affects motivation, pleasure, and learning. Too much or too little in the brain can result in disorders. Dopamine is the feel-good neurotransmitter, however, it actually plays a greater role in our motivation. Parkinson's disease, addiction, and ADHD are 3 common diseases associated with extreme dopamine levels. So, next time you get that motivational cue of smelling those delicious cookies in the oven, you know why you're already so excited before the first bite. It's dopamine.